Welcome to heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. My name is Mike Chisholm. As always, I am excited to host this program because I get to talk to all sorts of interesting and exciting people while we talk about the message of what He Changed It, what my wife's company is trying to do. And it excites me very, very much as to what's happening when it comes to the response that He Changed It has gotten already. I may sound like a broken record for our listeners who listen regularly to us, but at the end of the day, it's fun. It's fun watching this ride happen. If you haven't downloaded He Changed It yet, it's available in both of the app stores. Happy to have you on board and to see where we're at, and we're just getting started. I just love the fact that I get to pick the brains of very interesting people. I'm in the captain's chair as far as I'm concerned here when it comes to this He Changed It movement that we're starting. And it's just so exciting to meet somebody like our guest today. Now, the first thing I'm going to say about our guest today is that I'm going to give her some ultimate respect because she has served. And this is one of those things that's really special to me. Anybody who is willing to put their life on the line for a bigger cause, whatever that might be, is somebody who I respect, because I certainly haven't had the courage to do such a thing. And this is a gal who not only has served, but has come back on the other side from serving and recognized that there are problems that need to be solved. And that is a very exciting thing to me, because when I hear about the stories from some people who have served in the military, and some of the things that they've seen and gone through, and when they come back on the other side, some people are just kind of empty at that point, and they've been emptied out, and they've been hurt, and they've seen some stuff, and they've felt some things that they don't even necessarily know about. Well, this gal is Kelsi Sheren, and she is not only come back and seen some things that she wants to help heal, but she's built an entire company around that. And it's a company that sells really cool things and has really cool merchandise and ideas, but it also has a higher calling, just like He Changed It. I would say this isn't just a jewelry company that she has started, or it's a social enterprise, much like He Changed It, wanting to solve problems in the world. Kelsi, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. The founder of Brassimunity, thank you for being on heCast today.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. Wow, that introduction was wonderful. Thank you. More than too much.
Oh, no, hey man, it was the truth. I don't blow smoke. I just tell it like it is. And there wasn't anything there that I didn't, that was hyperbolous or an exaggeration. None of that. You started serving when you were what? How old were you?
18.
You were 18 years old.
Yeah.
What made you want to do this?
An old lady on a bus. Yeah, you heard me. An old
I'm
lady
riveted.
on a bus.
I'm riveted.
I got you there. Okay. I went to college in Algonquin College in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and I hated it so bad. So one of the things I love to do is go to history events, historical things. I love going to the War Museum, and obviously I spent a couple months in starting the university experience, and November rolls around, and I took the bus to the Remembrance Day ceremony in Ottawa. And it's the biggest ceremony we have in Canada, and it's quite large. And on the bus back, I actually just met a lady on a bus who was in an Air Force uniform in her late 90s, had to be, with just a chest full of medals. And I don't know what it was. It was like I was supposed to meet this lady, and we chatted. I went up to her and I asked her, I was like, can you just tell me about you? I want to know why you look as cool as you look. And we had a conversation for quite a while, and I went on my way, and something smacked me over the head while I was walking, and I realized I don't want to be doing what I'm doing. And I went and I joined the military the next day.
So on November 12th of whatever year that was, you went to join the military.
Yeah, 2007.
Oh.
I graduated high school in June. Yep. And I went to Algonquin early in August, tried for the soccer team, made it halfway through, and then didn't make it. So I was like, okay, so I really hate this experience. And then I signed up for a program just to basically get out of the small town that I was in. Grew up in a really tiny area and wanted out. I felt like a shark in a fishbowl situation. I needed out, and that was the only way to do it. And
Right.
then once I got there, I realized I hated it. And then this lady just was like a beacon of light in a weird way.
I appreciate when you talk about Remembrance Day, which is it Veterans Day in the U.S.?
Yeah, so Canada's Remembrance Day, Veterans Day in the US, Remembrance Day in Europe as well, and I'm pretty sure it's similar in Australia and others.
And let's do a sort of a history lesson. At the end of the day, Remembrance Day comes from an idea after the First World War that it was so the death was so atrocious, the scar of war was so unprecedented at that point that when the peace was signed and there was a basically a marker that they used, and it was the
Mhm.
number 11, the 11th hour, the 11th day, the 11th month, where everybody would stop and remember what happened back then, all of that death, and the
Mhm.
phrase "lest we forget" was attached to that. I've always been very uh, I've been touched by that, and always, because I'm a pacifist at the end of the day, and I know
Aren't
that
we
we live in
all?
yeah, yeah. And at the end of the day, I love that so much. And the idea that lest we forget is something that you care about too. You've got it tattooed on your body. That's such a
Yes, it's on my wrist actually. So every time I salute when I'm wearing my uniform on Remembrance Day, it's right on my wrist. It comes up at the side of my hand, and so that's my own way of expressing it without saying it all the time. It's there, and when I salute, it's a respect thing for me. So it's always there.
yeah. Well, first off, thank you for serving. I can't thank you enough for having that that desire to do something bigger the way that you did. And 2007, I'm not the biggest history buff in the world, but you saw some action.
Well, yeah. So 2007, I joined. 2008, we did basic training, SQ and DP1. So I was sworn in, did all the training fairly quickly in good succession. That doesn't always happen for people. So they're often in a little bit longer before they deploy. On graduation day in Quebec, Quebec, yeah, New Brunswick, I
Yep.
got posted to a base in Quebec. And right then and there, I got told I was going to be on the next rota to deploy the following April. So it was about January 2008 to April 2009 was the amount of time I was actually trained and in the military before I deployed to an active war zone.
And where was that?
Afghanistan. I was in Kandahar, the Maiwan district, Panjwai district, Helmand once, and I basically stayed in that area.
Um, so at the end of the day, before we talked, I asked if there was anything that was off limits. You were in Kandahar in a
Mm-hmm.
time of not peacetime, so
Yeah.
you saw some shit.
Yeah, so in 2009, we had a fairly deadly fighting season. And what for people don't know is that's the summertime season in Afghanistan. And the Middle East, it's where basically the opium grows and it's the harvest time that's essentially used to finance any of the terrorism activity. And so the fighting season is them protecting, the crops and the other things that benefit them down the road when they're doing, their lovely terrorist activities. They need to have funding from somewhere.
Mhm.
So during the fighting season, you get your IEDs are on another level. They're actively attacking rather than being passive and kind of getting attacked.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, I was an artillery gunner. So at the beginning, I was behind the lines, and I was with my unit, who was also attached to an American unit out in the middle of the Maiwan district
Right.
of Afghanistan, in a tiny little FOB called FOB Ramrod, which was an American base, and we were the only Canadians there. And it was just the two artillery guns, M777s, and our units. And then I got a phone call. My staff got a phone call saying that I was getting borrowed by the British forces to go on an on-foot operation in the Panjwai and Helmand district outside the wire, and that I was to report to them. So I got picked up with them, and then I ended up doing infantry for the remainder of the tour, and that's where subsequently I sustained my injury. That was my career-ending one.
At any point during this, did you say, "Hey, thanks, lady. Thanks for meeting me on that bus"?
No, I think you're supposed to do certain things in your life, whether they suck or not. And that was just the journey that I had been given. And it was, really my choice to look back and go, I really wish I never met her. I really wish I never went to school there. I wish I just blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, you can regret all you want. That doesn't change the past. You either embrace it and find the positive in it, or just forget it, because it's a waste of time.
Well, I think that would speak to a lot of our listeners right now. I mean, a lot of our listeners are guys who are looking for their purpose, or they're thinking about things that they've maybe done or been a part of, or whatever, where there is that regret. And the idea that, you go through some things, because I mean, like, I'll say this flat out. The amount of suck you went through is bigger than the amount of suck that I've gone through. It just is. And to hear you talk about that, it provides a perspective that we do have a choice on the other side of the suck, don't we?
Yeah, you do. And I think obviously there's a lot of people are like, well, that's nice to say, you've never been X, Y, and Z. And listen, I mean, there's things that have probably happened to people that are going to be 10 times more horrific, but I don't think there's a reason to really look at anything other than you have the choice, you make the decision. Unfortunately, there are parts of people, you have that dirty little voice that sits there sometimes, and you can't control it, and it's mocking you and going at you. And something I just said recently on another podcast was, they asked me, well, what do you say to those people when, you're having a hard time, you can't get out of bed, and that voice is just bringing you down and bringing you down? Say, argue with it, see what it says back. It often doesn't say shit. It often will look at you and go, it's like, well, why not me? Well, why can't I feel better? Well, why can't I get out of bed? Well, why can't I try something to help myself? Why can't I talk about it? And often that voice won't have anything else to say, because it's the tiny little bully in your head. And that's often the depression and the anxiety, or some type of mental health issue going on. And you can choose, maybe not all on your own, maybe with assistance or medication or other treatments or talk therapy or things like that, but you can make the decision to want to stay like that.
Right.
I truly believe that.
The idea that I think that sometimes it's just shining a light. It's just being aware, like being aware of that voice, number one, and number two, shining a light on that voice, whether you're doing it yourself or with somebody. Maybe that's what shining the light on the voice is, telling something about it. It really does diminish the power of that voice, doesn't it?
Yeah, if you just realize that voice is actually just a part of you. And so that voice is going to do nothing but bring both of you down. And if you choose to allow that voice to control what you're doing and how you feel every day, you're not losing to anything. You're losing to yourself. You're doing yourself a disservice by not arguing back and fighting for yourself, whether that's fighting with yourself to make yourself better, but you're doing yourself a disservice by not even trying.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And for people out there who aren't even sure of what to try or whatever, you're doing yourself a disservice by not doing that. And whatever it takes to explore whatever it is you're going through, it's worth it on the other side. It really is.
And I say that though too, hun, because I think that truthfully, I mean, it doesn't, people are like, well, therapy's expensive, or I can't do this, or I don't have anyone to talk to. I I tell people, I was like, if you meet someone standing in line and they're like, hey, how's it going? They'll be like, good. Yeah. I'm having a shit day. Life sucks today. Maybe they won't expect that, but say it out loud. Say it so somebody else can hear you. Who cares if it's a stranger? How you doing? Not great. Just be honest. Not great, man. Not great today. That's okay to say that, but say it, because as soon as you say it out loud, you get it off of your chest, even if it's temporary, just for that second.
Yeah. And I think that's, one of my life's mottos has always been, don't focus on the problem, focus on the solution.
Correct.
And that doesn't mean you don't acknowledge the problem. That doesn't mean you deny that the problem exists or any of that stuff. No, you don't. You recognize it and give it its due. But that's when you flip over and you say, okay, how can I solve this? What can I do to make this better? How can I get rid of this problem? And I think that's a first step. What you're talking about, acknowledgement, that's a first step in that. And I think it's really important.
Yeah, I think it's a great step forward. And I think people, it's definitely hard to hear it when, somebody's listening to a podcast and they're like, well, this must be nice, but, I'm broke, or I'm, homeless, or I'm, X, Y, and Z. And that doesn't diminish anything, but all it does is it gives you a starting point when you hear those things. It doesn't mean you have to have the answers all at once, but just be willing to acknowledge that something's going on that isn't right, that isn't what you hoped your life would be, and you're not feeling right. So it's the starting point. You got to start somewhere. As long as you start, though, I don't care where, just start.
So the idea of not feeling right, you sustained your injury, and at that point there, did you become a desk jockey, or was there a discharge attached to that essentially?
Oh God, no, I was sent home to the hospital. Yeah, no, that was a weird one. So because I sustained my injury during, how do I explain it? Because I sustained the injury during a operation while I was attached to another country that was not myself, that was not Canadian. A lot of things were a little convoluted. Some questions were had, my staff weren't there to confirm, but all these other guys were. And so, there was deaths on my operation. And so there was a lot of things attached to what happened to me. And when I came
that
back,
frustrates me to hear that. That frustrates me that one of the things attached to that is red tape. Good
It gets so much worse. Oh, you're gonna love this then.
Oh man.
You ready for this ride? So yeah, no, listen, we all have our different experiences in the military. Some have fantastic. I happen to just have a shit one, and that's just the way it is, the way the cookie crumbles. I don't feel any sort of way. It just was. And due to that, they sent me to the hospital in Kandahar, and I met with a few doctors who immediately wrote down acute post-traumatic stress disorder, like questions of continued job. And after that, then they just shoved some pills down my throat. And then I would just be a walking zombie for a while. I almost accidentally shot a child. It was horrific. And then they said, okay, well, she's still doing her job, and nobody's questioning the fact that she's completely out of it while handling one of the largest weapons the Canadian military has, that shoots 40 kilometers with a 100-pound round, on just the heaviest drugs you could put her on. But they only really started taking notice when I started talking back to my staff members. So, my bosses would be like, Burns, you need to go do this. That's my maiden name, by the way. Burns, you need to go do this. Turn around and say, fuck you.
Yeah.
No. And they look at me and they're like, that's a chargeable offense. Like, you know better, but you can tell there's something wrong. And when you come back, no, I couldn't control myself. I couldn't control my thoughts. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. I wasn't functioning. And then they said, okay, finally, she needs to go back to Kandahar. So they sent me back. Then the hospital was like, she's done. So then they were like, okay, she's being sent home to Canada early and to a hospital to report to the base, then to a hospital. And then after that, then they kind of went with it from there. And then I just didn't hear from anybody for about 6 months. So it was I flew home through Kandahar and another undisclosed location to Heathrow, to Toronto, to Quebec, got there at 2 a.m. to an empty airport and had to figure out how to get back to the base. Once I got back to the base, I was given a piece of paper and said, you're to report to the Ottawa hospitals. And then no one called for a really long time. It's laughable now because it's ridiculous, but you would get like this call from a case manager and then they would never call you back. And you're like, okay, what's going on? As long as you had your prescriptions for your medications, nobody really bothered much until they were like, we're paying her. She's not doing anything though. We should probably call her and make her start doing something.
Wow. And I can't imagine that I'm the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth, or 500th civilian to hear this story and just go, I'm aghast at that.
I'm not the only one though, sweetie. This is what's funny to me is this is a normal reoccurring story.
Right.
Period.
Wow. Okay. So, the way you're feeling at this point here, you're back in Canada, you're still reeling at this point?
I didn't have any feelings. I was dead inside from June 11 on.
So you got to that place of numbness, and that's a dangerous spot.
It was beyond. There was no, I physically remember and felt it turn off. Like I remember the moment, I remember the day, I remember the time, I remember the smells, I remember where it was. And I remember it was a light switch feeling. And then after that, there was no empathy, there was no patience, there was no happiness or sadness, no destruction, there was nothing you could do that would make my face change. I would smile and go, I got nothing. I don't know why this is happening to my face. It's my face is doing it, but nothing. There was nothing. And it took probably to 2000 and my now husband, who I was dating at the time, was the big catalyst to this. But I didn't start, I don't even think I said I love you in 2 years, 3 years into a relationship, because I didn't know what that was or how to express that, or even I could feel that. I could say it, but I didn't feel anything.
I just want to say something that I'm grateful for, because I know where you are now.
Yeah.
One thing you said, that you didn't feel any empathy, and
Nothing.
that is something that scares the shit out of people when they hear about
Should.
somebody who's not capable of feeling empathy, somebody who realizes themselves that maybe they've slipped in that regard, and you feel it now. And that's where the part where I'm grateful for is that you've actually been to that place and you can come back and say, no, I was at that place, but you don't always have to be in that place.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a point in time where it's a good thing to be able to go to that place when you're doing the jobs that I was doing and others are doing every day.
Yeah.
But I also know it also could have been a lot more useful while at war. I would have maybe seen things a little clearer, a little differently. But when you only see just blinding anger, there is like I didn't even feel angered, to be honest. It was just like, I can't even say I felt hatred. I just knew those people in front of me at that time that I was searching. This sounds so bad, but I could have shot them all in the face and felt nothing.
Yeah.
And that's not to say I did, but I'm saying that is how it's so hard to explain to others what that true numbness, because like, oh, I feel numb. I'm like, no, bitch, you don't know numb. You don't know dead inside, like the way some people can truly know dead inside.
We talk about it's a neat phrase. I'm a Joe Rogan guy, and so I think he coined the phrase. Somebody coined the phrase and made it real big. That we want to be people who just don't give a fuck. We give zero fucks about everything. But really, at the end of the day, you don't want to be the extreme version of that.
No, you don't want to have no fucks to give. Trust me, I know that saying, and that's like the definition of my everyday. But there's a point where you can have an aspect of that in your life. But I truly believe you cannot give a fuck, but you can still be empathetic and kind and loving and feel passion and happiness towards things. There's nothing wrong with that. You can couple that with not giving a fuck. And I feel that's kind of what I'm like now. I really, truly don't give a fuck what anybody thinks about anything.
Right.
I do what I do to make myself, my life, my family, my business, my company, those I'm helping happy, and whatever that takes to do that. If I have to do something or work with someone, I'll suck it up. But that's my goal. I want to have that. I can feel and love and be empathetic and care for others, but I also really don't care what you fucking think. Like, I just don't. That's okay to have that.
Yeah, it's really, at the end of the day, I think what we're trying to say is that we're not sweating the small stuff and categorizing things properly and knowing what to give a fuck about and what we can let go.
Exactly. You don't have to hold on to everything. And I think that's a huge problem, especially with those. I mean, I'm not a doctor by any means, but from my own perspective and those I've been friends with who struggle with mental health, one of the biggest things is just that you so badly want to not care so that you don't have to feel the weight of everything else, because things are triggering when you feel. Things are upsetting when you feel. Things can be detrimental when you feel. When you don't feel, life is life. Everything just goes. Nothing can be upsetting. But you can get out of it.
Oh man, that is your perspective is fascinating. And I gotta ask this question. So on the road back, because at the end of the day, I don't want to. By the way, you should write a book.
I did.
When's it come out?
No.
When's it out?
Fun fact: it was supposed to be last November, but because COVID's a treat, we're hoping this November. But there's some things in the conversation that could possibly push it. So all for good reasons. All good reasons, love. Don't worry.
And title is going to be Brassimunity as well.
Yeah, everything falls under the Brassimunity umbrella, and that's where we keep everything and encompass all the donations.
Okay, that's cool. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that more in a bit, but I still want to stay back to that journey. You talk about your then boyfriend, now husband. And it was somebody who cared for you. Obviously, that was I don't know if I'd say a catalyst, but somebody who was definitely a part of you being able to heal. Like, how instrumental was it that there were other people who kind of saw things and cared for you? Or was this a journey that you had to take on your own?
I think for me, being with or having someone to want to be with, that made me go, okay, I can't be with someone if I'm this unhealthy. So like, for example, I met, Brady, my husband. I met him like right before I deployed. He knew me for like 30 seconds before I turned into whoever I am now.
Mm.
And and we were both very young, and he was a professional supercross racer, so I figured I would probably not talk to him again. He's off being a big deal doing his own thing. And so I deployed, and we stayed friends, and we came back and we started talking, and then I slowly realized really quickly that this guy could understand trauma, and he didn't start to question, like when I would have these outbursts or these ridiculous questions, or he would ask me something and my response would be just so dark and just horrific, like who would even say that? And there was no questioning of it, there was no judging of it, there was only what can I do for you, what do you need me to do to help you sleep at night? And it would be little things like, just answer the phone when I call. Just never, I know that sounds ridiculous, but just answer the phone, because there are times where if you don't answer the phone, that's it. And there was a time like that, and he did answer the phone. And so for him to do those things early on, even in our friendship, before we were even a couple, he understood me in a way that I couldn't understand myself at the time. And he gave me not only a reason to keep pushing forward, but, to be alive, but he made me realize I was worth more than I thought I was. And
Right.
at that time, I didn't think I was worth anything. I didn't think I was worthy of love or caring, or someone caring about me or wanting to love me or wanting to marry me or even sees a future with me, because I was told I'll probably never have kids because, the mental health and the drugs, and, I can never get insured because I'm a suicide risk.
Yeah.
I can't get insurance on a house. I can't, why would it, little things like people deem me, I'm the crazy soldier, I'm the one who was medically released, like I'm gonna go shoot up my place. Like, who would want to love that? Who would want to love somebody who screams all night and has to change the sheets every day because of nightmares? And who would want, the suicide? It's like, who would want to marry that? And for whatever reason, he was able to see me through my trauma, see me through my therapy, attend therapy and treatment with me, understand that when I took a pill and I started rambling on, and he would wake up in the middle of the morning and go, what was that? I have no idea what you're talking about, buddy. Like, he could take the trauma for what it was, see that trauma wasn't who I was, but just a part of who I was, and that he could see past it. And he made me want to figure out a way to be able to be a mother. He made me want to figure out a way to be the person that he would want to be married to, healthy, mentally wise, and I wanted to be able to do those things because, not only for myself, because I owed it to myself, but because at the time that I couldn't realize it on my own, so he was there to make me, persevere, whether I liked it or not. And same with my parents. Right. They were instrumental in that.
Well, I gotta ask you this question here before we kind of move on to the next part of the story, talking about the company and Brassimunity and these amazing bracelets with a bullet on them and all these cool things that you guys are making. And I'm foreshadowing much better times with cool things right now. But I have to make this point and ask this question, because we got guys who are our listeners that, and I'm going to be politically incorrect when I say this, I'm going to say it facetiously, but they're married to a crazy bitch at home.
Okay.
We got guys who listen to this thing that, and I mean, with guys who have groups of friends and they know, oh yeah, that's Phil. His wife is, whoa, man, she's a handful. That doesn't mean Phil doesn't love his wife. Phil loves his wife so much and doesn't know what to do many times and doesn't understand. Obviously professional help and things like that, medical doctors, obviously that has to happen. But really at the end of the day, very rarely are we able to get somebody who is on the other side of that, the wife, the girlfriend, the partner, who can so beautifully articulate how you were feeling and the struggle that you went through. And I love that it's went, by the way, because that gives hope to guys who may have a partner where that's the lot in life at that moment. Do you have any advice, or do you have any tactics or strategy, books to read? I don't know, anything like that
Yeah.
for a guy who's got a partner where their struggles are so real.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So listen, there's going to be times where I always say this when I first got introduced into Brady's circle of friends. You don't think they didn't call me the crazy bitch? The first time I met his best friend, he made a comment to me. I kicked him in the face and threw him in a pool.
Oh my God.
He
Okay.
told that story at my wedding.
You were that girl. You were
I
that
was
girl.
that girl. You say something, you better know I'm going to come for you
Oh,
because
I
I
can't wait
don't
to read
deal
this
with
book.
that.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's my point, though. It's like he told the story at the wedding, but
Yep.
here's the thing. He's still Uncle Mike. He's still Uncle Sushi. These are still people that are important in our life and have seen us through this journey. What I say to those people is, number one, is she truly being a crazy ass bitch, or are you making her a fucking crazy ass bitch
Hey, there you go.
by
There you go.
literally no, but there's two sides to this. By literally not sitting there when she's trying to talk to you, or you're on your phone staring at it while she's trying to say one thing that's important? Are you antagonizing her by saying, hey, I'm going to do something, and then never doing it? Well, you wonder why we nag.
Yeah.
Just fucking do it. Not
Yeah.
a big deal. But are you someone who is truly struggling with a wife who is having mental health issues due to they're a parent and they're now the teacher, the parent, the housekeeper, and stuck in the house because of COVID?
Right.
Are they the mother who has gone through postpartum depression that has been so bad that she literally is tried to almost kill her child because it's so bad? Are you dealing with a partner who abuses substance because she has no other way to cope and doesn't think there's any other way to feel better? Are you dealing with a partner who has lost a child, or you two have lost a child, or have had you're trying so hard to get pregnant? The circumstance is so different for everyone. And so I don't say that anybody is a dickhead or a crazy bitch. I think what the problem is we are all struggling. We're all human beings, but nobody knows how to communicate it because God forbid the man shows the weakness. God forbid the woman sits down and goes, it's okay for you to cry, honey. It's okay. Let it out. The problem is we don't communicate. And people who choose not to communicate with their spouses, that is the number one problem. If you all just sat down and sat in front, this is something my doctor, he taught me and my husband, and when we did trauma therapy, just basically it was like, hey, come to therapy with me to learn how to deal with me. Yeah. Because I'm struggling right now. I don't know how to cope with myself. So I can only imagine that you don't know how to cope with me. So one of the things I learned recently, actually, and I found it quite useful, due to COVID being incredibly stressful, a lot of people are in their houses together probably more than they're used to.
Yep.
They are stuck with kids. They get no breaks. They get no time.
Yep.
The one thing, if you're not watching and you're only listening, my doctor said, listen, nothing's going to get, settled when two people are fighting and are heightened, and are not just heightened, but are already heightened in a heightened state due to the fact that finances are tight, kids are screaming, you're never left alone anymore because COVID has locked you down, and you don't know how to make sense of the world because literally the world feels upside down right now.
Yes.
Instead of looking at each other and keeping and going and your fault and my fault, stop and look at each other. Do not say a word and put up the timeout sign. Don't say a word. Don't say you need to go for a timeout, or you say, hey, this, not another word. You separate for 30 minutes because there's a part of the brain, he explained it to me, and by God, I can't seem to get it proper today. So just go with me on a second. There's a part of the brain that when a certain person gets to a certain point, it's like the reptilian brain, essentially.
Yeah, the cognitive dissonance that shows up when you
correct.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And so you cannot form, your speech centers shut down, and you cannot form sentences properly.
Right.
And that is a part of the articulation. And when you can't articulate what you're feeling or why you're feeling that way, all you're going to do is fight. You're not going anywhere.
Yep.
This is just going to get worse. Take a step back for a second. You don't say you need to go. It's, hey, I'm taking a time out. Just need a minute. And whether and I'm telling you right now, my husband did that to me the other day. He looked at me and just did it, and I was seething. But then I stopped for a second and I was like, yeah, you're right. And I walked away because I knew at that moment, nothing positive was going to come from that. It's just communication. I know it sounds simple and I know how difficult it can be. Sit down with your wife or husband, give yourselves 5 minutes and just sit there and look at each other. I just want to check in with you. How you doing?
Yeah.
No, but seriously, how are you doing? Is there anything that we can work on together? Is there anything that either of us is doing that is causing one another to get those, I'm not mad at you. It's just slowly building and you're pissing me off. But just be willing to have the conversation and just sit. That's it. It doesn't have to be harder than that.
Well, and that's, I appreciate hearing that. And, you know, clearly, some of the issues that you were talking about there, and you articulated them so beautifully of what can be going on, you know, but between the ears of somebody and the complexity of that, you were able to negotiate that. You moved forward through a series of, I would assume, therapy and learning a quest of hitting that rock bottom and climbing back out.
Yeah.
And you going through that journey, you feel the need to help others who are going through similar journeys, and you built an entire company around it.
Yeah, it wasn't actually supposed to be anything. I was doing it selfishly for art therapy. My doctor suggested at some point, you know, I was just so depressed and there was nothing positive coming. And, you know, you're just lying in bed all day. And he said, you know, why don't you try art therapy? I thought it was stupid, but I did it. And I started playing with crystals and beads. And I was like, hey, crystals are supposed to help people. We live on the West Coast. Why wouldn't they?
Sure.
So I was like, I'm going to try anything. I was at that point where like, I literally use this analogy on another podcast. If you would have told me if I lick a frog every single day, every morning, my PTSD would go away, I would have had a crate of frogs lined up by my bedside and I would lick them aggressively every morning because I was up for anything. So you got to understand, I'm not a jewelry person. I'm not a fashion person, but I learned really quickly, if crystals will work, I'm in. So I jumped on board, I got some elastic and I taught myself how to build jewelry. But what would really, the winning situation was my husband came home. And at that point, that day I hadn't moved, but I also hadn't lied in bed all day. And I also hadn't thought about suicide all day. And yes, I didn't brush my teeth, but I was out of my goddamn bed. And that was the stepping stone. And then we realized, okay. And then my doctor's like, well, keep at it. And I'm like, okay. Then I started going, my husband went, hey, these are kind of cool. Do you think you would ever want to sell anything like this? And I said, well, I've always wanted to have a foundation or a charity or a support group, just something, just some way to help. And unfortunately, I couldn't seem to figure that out. And he goes, well, why don't you start selling these? And I was like, I don't know how. And so I, you know, with his help and my in-laws' help, because they had business experience, I just started banging on doors. And then some people started to carry it. And then some other people started to carry it. And then I realized I could build in enough margin to do donations. And then I went from my kitchen table to my company now, and it'll be 5 years in March that we've had Brassimunity. But really, we moved out of my house about 3 years ago into a real girl business.
Wow.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, a fixation aimed at just helping you keep your mind on something that wasn't destructive, a fixation that, you know, just, and what did it turn into? That is really, really awesome. Talk a little bit about the bracelet's the one that nails me. The bracelet with the bullet, like at the end of the day, super, super, super cool. Number one, where do you get the bullets from?
Well, we used to get them from, before I needed large quantities of them, we used to get them from friends.
Yeah.
And from friends. And then now, once I became a company, we actually produce our own now. Where we were at the point where our factories had to start producing their own ammunition lookalikes, essentially, to be able to travel and do all the fun things with it. But at the very beginning, and we do still have quite a few of them, the original warrior bracelet has a NATO 7.62 or 5.56 round cut down. And then the firing pins popped out and then chamfered and cleaned up. And then the beads were like the crystal thing, right? So I like went to a bead shop in Vancouver called Country Beads, and the owner's name is Sue. And she like knows everything there is to know about crystals. And I started asking her questions and she started teaching me about them. And I was like, well, I like the colors. And then I realized quickly, like certain crystals I didn't like to work with because they made me super anxious. And then I started learning about the properties, and I went like full into the deep end, man, with the crystals. But they were the warrior bracelet, and the warrior bracelet is, you know, stood the test of time here. It's 5 years later, and it's been what we're known for. And I'll never ever hate on that thing. That thing is a classic and a goodie for a reason.
It's funny you talk about the crystals. I got a piece of blue calcite here that I carry with me, pretty much wherever I go, and I've done it for the last 4 or 5 years. The way I was always raised that the idea of crystals and things like that was a little bit hinky. And then, but one of the things that turned me and got me to kind of to a higher level of understanding is there's a lot of people who wear the copper bracelets. And they talk about those the bracelets and what they do for them and all that kind of stuff. Crystals, it's essentially the same thing.
Correct.
In fact, it's almost the exact same thing. So when you talk about this warrior bracelet, it's got a bullet casing on it. And what crystals make up the warrior bracelet, and what are the properties of that particular product?
Well, so for us, the warrior bracelet was right now currently we've actually cut back on the beaded bracelets just due to the fact that we're a fashion company, so we do follow a little bit of trends, but sure. we do have our BNU basics, our premium basics, which is our the collection with that we'll always have kind of thing. So right now we have the matte black onyx, yep, and howlite, but rhyolite, lava rock, hematite, matte hematite. And we used to have the gamut. We used to have everything from ambers to pink and black rhyolite to what else do we have? Oh my God, we had blue lapis, we had lapis lazuli, we had jade. We had everything. But what we narrowed it down to were the most calming property stones we could find. And howlite and onyx are the overall rounding basics of that. And things like rose quartz, the just overall calming effect, yep, positivity, clearing sort of situation. And we found those two to be the ones that have stuck with us, the ones that have done the best for our customers, the ones we get continuous questions about. And so for us now, it's just that we deal with onyx and howlite, and they're not only super cool looking, but they just happen to be my favorite, the top ones I gravitated towards when I first started this.
Yeah, you never forget your first, right?
Isn't that hilarious? Your first what? Crystal. What are you talking about? Why are you guys so gross?
I can certainly see why that particular product would also be a legacy product within your line. But when you go to, it's brassimunity.com, right?
Yeah, correct.
So for those who are listening right now and you can multitask. I'm not one of those people that can multitask, but if you're one of them, you can jump on to brassimunity.com and you'll see what we're talking about right now. And these bracelets are awesome, but you'll also see that they sell a lot more stuff than bracelets. Hey, this enterprise that you've started, it's been good to you and getting better. Hey, you've been expanding.
Yeah, it's growing. I'm really happy with it. I try to never say no to opportunities, and I always try to be open-minded. And the one thing I've learned really quickly is to stop being married to my thoughts as I've grown this business, because it only is a detriment to, where it goes, how it functions. And, when you start something, it's not always what you think it will be, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go on the ride and see where it can take you. And in terms of, my company, I said to my husband one time, I remember it, one time, I said, I would love, one day it would be so cool if I could have a pair of sunglasses with a bullet in it. And I'm not kidding you. Next thing you know, he gets on the computer. He's a brilliant guy. He taught himself all the CAD programs. He builds out, draws this, goes, hey, let's call one of our factories and see if they can make a sample of this. And sure enough, sends it over. Now we've got a patent pending sunglasses with the bullet actually built into the temples, and we're the only ones in the world with it. And I am just so blown away by the team. My husband does all the design work, all the CAD drawings, gets them all to the factory. We deal with the sourcing. I literally can say something one time and he's like, well, we're making that happen. We can do that. So, I wanted a podcast, and my management team was like, you should do a podcast. You should do one by around this date. She got a few episodes done. I was like, okay. So I'm at Home Depot. I'm buying paint. The next day, I'm painting the inside of our design container. We're turning it into a whole studio. Within a 2-week span, we have a studio.
A podcast studio inside of a sea can.
Yeah, we have it. It's so sick. It's a matte black sea container. It used to be our design space. And on top of it, we actually have, I call it my adult tree fort. There's a deck up there with some meditation space and a hangout and an egg chair. And I just really believe in giving whatever I'm doing, I want to give it the very, very best I can. And so when the Brassimunity brand started to slowly grow and take on this life. And I realized really quickly, hey, this can be more than a jewelry company. We can be a sunglass brand. You can have a podcast. It's not to say that, you know, I'm not conscious of the fact that, you know, what's that saying? It's like you can be a jack of all trades, but master of none. I still think you can be a jack of all trades and pretty fucking good at a lot of things as long as you're willing to put the work in.
You have a meditation deck on top of this sea can. Is there anything that you don't make badass? Like you make bracelets badass, you make sunglasses badass, you got a meditation badass. Like this is so cool.
I have grenades on my walls.
Oh, hey, the grenades. I want to talk about that. Candy was showing me some of the stuff when we were prepping for you to come on, and she was showing me some of the different things that you have in your lines. And one of the things, you know, people have like hand models and things like that. You don't have that. You've got them on these white painted white grenades. And I'm like, hey, how much are the grenades? She goes, I think they're there for decoration. I think that's just to model the jewelry. I was like, oh, I like those white grenades. Those are bad.
I'll have to send you guys some white grenades. No, I have them everywhere. Actually, the grenade thing, that's funny. It was one of my favorite things in the military. I love grenades. The idea of something being that tiny, I'm holding my hand up like a baseball, but being that tiny and being able to pack the punch that it does, it fits with me. I'm the 5 foot, 110 pound gunner, and I like to think I pack a punch. And before I deployed, my brother and I actually got matching World War II grenade tattoos done. Wow. And so they hold a special spot for me. And when my husband and I decided to buy our first home, he said, you know, as a commitment present, you know, because we're not getting engaged, we're going to wait a solid 4 years, buy a house with you, and then decide if I'm going to marry you. It was super awesome. He goes, you know, as a commitment present, he did this. He went and got my favorite style grenades. He took them to a powder coating place, got them powder coated in different colors, red, yellow, and green. And then he put them in a bowl of fruit. And he goes, this is for our home that we're going to buy together. It's a commitment present. And then he took a pin out and made a ring out of the grenade pin. And I'm like, God damn it, you're so cool.
This is the most romantic thing I've ever heard in my life.
I know, right? And it's with grenades. So how do I go wrong?
Well done, Mr. Sheren. Well done, man.
What can I say?
Way to know your girl. And I think that at the end of the day, that's really all we need to do. If we know our girl, that's gonna make, or we know our partner, that's gonna make our lives a hell of a lot easier. You know, I'm just gonna shoehorn this idea in here real quick just to add to it, because it's something you said way earlier in the podcast. The idea of manning up. We're trying to change it. Just so you're aware, he changed it as trying to take that phrase back.
Take it back.
Many movements have taken phrases that have had stereotypical meanings to it, and ours, the one that we're taking back, is manning up. And our idea of manning up, and he changed it, is taking responsibility, taking inventory, becoming aware of these things, and doing what it has to do. It has nothing to do with the idea of that old version of take it and stuff it down, man up, you know, be a man, do this thing. No, being a man is taking responsibility for this stuff. And your guy was being a man when he was giving you a fruit basket full of grenades.
Oh, he knows what's up. But listen, like I got no issue. I've got no issue with those. I think language, I can say this now after doing an attempt at writing a book here, and then having an incredible team to actually make it a finished product. So I'm not saying by any means I'm a writer, but I can tell you words hold a lot of meaning. And I
words
think
have power, no question.
They have an incredible amount of power. Yep. And I honestly, truly think, saying man up does not have to be a negative connotation. I think it can have this, if you want to be that, that stereotypical strong person, man up means stand up for what you believe in, put the work in for what you want, be willing to do the things that are the hard things, and man up and be that person so you can be that example. It does not have to be a negative thing. It really doesn't.
Well, and the suck usually doesn't last that long when you decide to get out of the suck.
That's right.
When you decide to change things, things start to move because there's nothing, I hate to sound old Tony Robbins or whatever, but there's nothing more powerful than a made up mind. And I think that right now, our society, there are so many people for one reason or another, whether it is PTSD, whether it is indifference, whether it's fear, whatever it is, there's so many minds out there that just aren't made up. They're just in this place of neutral, this floating place of suck. And you can make up your mind and do that, and changes can come very quickly.
I feel like in the way the world is right now, a lot of people are being told what to feel. Told like,
Sure.
or they're
Absolutely.
waiting to be told how to feel about something
Yep.
and how they should respond to something. And that's fine. If you want to do that, that's great. But I've always been told this by my parents and by my mother that you have to, if you want something, go do it. You don't quit. If you start something, you do it. And that's no different than saying, man up. If you become a father, man
Yeah.
up, do what it takes to be a successful, great example for your child. It doesn't matter where you come from. I want to bring this up because I think this is a great example. I had an incredible guest on yesterday named Topher, and he's an U.S. Marine Air Force vet, and he's a rapper.
Wow.
But here's what's great. He's got the #1 Billboard song in hip hop right now. But Spotify took it down because he's a conservative Black rapper.
Oh my God.
He is literally 29 years old. He deployed, like, this guy is brilliant, right? He came from the tiniest town in like southern Mississippi, told that the world is this and that, and that he could never do anything. Literally, fast forward to 6 years in the military, having a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, having a wife that stuck it through, never giving up on his mission, never giving up on his dream, putting himself forward and fucking manning up and getting it done. And I love that.
Yes.
You can come from anywhere.
That's a phenomenal story. If there's anything that I can do to publicize, I have a feeling you and I might be trading some podcast guests anyway. I've already got three of our former guests that I'm like, oh, these guys got to meet Kelsi.
They're coming. I got you. Don't worry. I'll hook you up.
Yeah, because that's but good for him. Good for him. Manning up, man. And I'm fired up. I'm fired up after talking to you. And I know that a lot of our listeners are, I hate to say this, but we have, and I knew you, as you know this, you host a show, you know how fast these things fucking go.
They go.
I could talk to you forever. I look forward to the next time we interact with each other, whatever that is. Before that happens, let's just make sure. So on the social media, is it Brassimunity? Is everything Brassimunity?
Everything's Brassimunity, and now I've been told to have a personal page in that one. So if you just go to Brassimunity, it'll say founded by, just click on my name. It's there as well. I don't post anything fun. I'm just told I have to have it.
Yeah.
But
good for you for being aligned on all platforms. Well done.
You gotta be.
That's what you're supposed to be, right?
Yeah. Well, you're supposed to be. Fun fact, though, that takes some time. I understand that. I mean, we do the Twitter twatter thing. I don't do it. I'm not good at it. I'm on Instagram. I post pictures of bracelets with rap music and 4-year-olds. And then I've got an incredible team that handles our social media here and our email blasts and whatnot. So, Brassimunity, that's bravery, retired assistant soldier support, and unifying the public with that and getting them to realize that there are people out there struggling that need our help and that we should stop turning a blind eye to them. That's it. That's all we do, man.
Oh my God. Yeah. You know what? I couldn't say it any better than that. Fuck yes. That's what I say to that.
Thank you.
You fired me up today.
Yes.
Kelsi, I just really appreciate you so much and taking time to do this. Like I said, cannot wait for our next interaction. There it is, guys. It's another episode. You know what? He changed it. This is the kind of stuff that we need to do. Iron sharpens iron. And when you get a really good piece of iron, like Kelsi here, this is what it takes. So wherever you're going, whatever it is that you're doing, jump in the app, start talking to some people. Let's make it happen. And once again, thank you very much for being part of another episode of heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. My name is Mike Chisholm. Go change something.